Hello, and welcome to Writer's Block. I'm your host, Adelina. Let's find your story. How do I know if my story is good enough? That is a very vague question that a lot of people in the industry don't know how to answer. Because when you say, okay, good enough for what? You know, it's a very tricky question to get into in the first place, because if you're asking yourself, well, is my story like, okay, it's good enough, then it's probably not good enough. If when you know that your story is good enough, you d- the way that your passion comes alive is so different and so exciting and exhilarating, in the sense that when you look at it and everything that you've when you look back at your story and everything you've done, you know that everything is perfect. You just know. So if you're asking yourself, is my story good enough? It isn't. Just straight up, it isn't. It isn't, at least for within yourself. It might be good enough to put out in the industry. But if you're asking yourself, is my story good enough? Is my book good enough? Is my screenplay good enough? When you really ask yourself that question, and you're questioning yourself and your story, because it's your own story that you are building and creating, even if it's a story that you you've built from the ground up, or you're doing a retelling, or you're taking a movie and turning it into a book, or a book and turning it into a movie. Even if you're not building things from the ground up. Okay, am I retelling this story in a way that is different enough from other retellings, or is my book just like the movie, or is my movie enough like the book? Because when we see, like, a lot of these adaptations, from especially from books to movies or books to TV shows, they don't get adapted quite right, and it turns a little shaky and rocky, and people aren't happy with it. You have to ask, if you're asking yourself if your story is good enough, it's not. Period. It's if you will know when your story is good enough, when you've looked at it enough, when you've read it enough. Like, if you're looking at your story, reading through your story from an audience point of view is one of the most powerful things you can do as a writer. Even, like, with the book that I'm writing, it is a fantasy murder mystery, so, like, if you come into the show or the movie or the book not knowing anything but the genre. So let's say it's a fantasy to murder mystery with some romance in it. Is the book you're writing. And that's all the knowledge that you're going in with. And you read through your book, even you as the author and the writer, the plot twist. It's a really hard thing to do as an author, to read this story that you have created, that you put your soul into, that every single small detail, to the when you're going through and editing it, like, oh, that small bit of foreshadowing and everything. One of the hardest things to do as a writer, to especially know if your story is good enough, is to detach yourself from the story and come in as the audience, especially, like, just establishing who is my audience? How do I want to make them feel? And how did I feel when I was reading this, coming from a detached point of view from my, from my audience perspective. It is a just extremely, extremely hard thing to do, but it is an extremely necessary thing to do as a writer, because if you can't, know what your audience is going to feel when they read it and how you feel when you read it, especially if you feel disappointed or you feel like, well, that didn't entirely make sense, then you know where there's work that needs to be done, which is also, if you know your audience, sharing your story with people within that age range or within that audience that are going to give you the right feedback, like giving your story to your mommy might not be a great thing to do. She'd be like, "Oh, my honey cakes, I'm so proud of you," blah blah blah. Your mommy might not be the best choice. But like, if your audience is kids, if you give it to a kid's going to be brutally honest with you. That's just how kids are. You give it to if your audience is 4 to 6 year olds, you give it to a 4-year old. The 4-year old's going to be brutally honest with you. And the truth hurts, but also the 4-year old's going to be brutally honest with you on your story, And especially, there's even if you give it to, if your age range is like teenagers or adults, you give it to a teenager and adult, you have to be selective to who you give it to. You have to give it to someone who is going to give you pure and honest feedback, because you still have people like, well, as people get older, where they're very unsure of things, and we don't want to hurt people's feelings, because we're more conscious. We're more conscious. We're not that 4-year-old that's gonna be like, this fucking sucks. Change it right now. We're not gonna be that 4-year-old. But so just, and even just letting people know, like, just give me, like, truth hurts, but give me brutally honest feedback on my story, because I need it. And publishers and companies are going to give you that honest feedback, period, because industry's tough luck. But also, like, if you don't, we're more tough on ourselves than other people are on us too. So it is also very easy for us to have a skewed point of view of our writing and our art, because to us sometimes it will never be good enough. But also, when you reach that thing that you are so passionate about, and you're just so extremely happy with it, and you're just so extremely passionate about it, sometimes it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, because you are happy with it and you are passionate about. So, and why I've talked about it so much, and I've made posts on it on Instagram and all of that, and blogs about it, is, knowing that you want to be a writer, but what kind of writer, and I thought I wanted to be a screenwriter. I wrote so much, and I love movies, and I love cinema, and I love screenwriting. But when I started writing my book, I felt something completely different. Like, just like I just felt something completely different, with like just something shifted. Where I'm like, this is what I'm here for. This is what I'm meant to do. And that is how I know that, and like how, like, everything, like all these pieces are just aligning for me, and I'm not trying to, like, this is not like a life, like, I'm not a life coach or anything, but when you create that perfect story, and that the story that is good enough, I honestly, I hate that wording, good enough. You're just enough. You're enough. Your story's enough. It's so backhanded, and it really just is shitty. And but like when you finally get the pieces of the puzzle together for yourself, and everything just starts to align, and you just know, especially like within your story, everything just aligns perfectly, And I mean, some of that, like you got to do research for what is in your story. One of my biggest things in that I've also struggled with my book, and I've literally read through my book and I wrote down like delete this chapter because it's filler. Never ever do I, if I read a book and there is filler in it, I put it down. I put it down. And as should anyone else. If you read a book and it has filler in it, put it down. Filler was created by people who don't know how to, I shouldn't say who don't know how to write. Filler was created by people who are not passionate about their craft and about writing. Because they are just meaningless words on a page that don't drive the story forward. Never should you ever have filler in your writing, because it is going to kill you as a writer. It is going to kill you of an audience, of a publishing deal, of a TV show or movie deal, whatever. Having filler in a story is one of the worst things you could ever do for it, and is also one of the biggest things why people are like, well, my story, like, it reads well, it flows well, but like there's just a missing piece. Check for filler, because filler will make your story dead. It's literally, it's a dead space within your writing. It is extremely and utterly stupid, because every single thing that you should have in your story should drive it forward, should be a part of a motive, or what, I don't know, whatever else. But there should be no such thing as filler. Should never have existed. It should exist ever again, ever. I don't want to hear or think or read the word filler. Filler is the thing. Filler is tissue paper that you put in a gift bag because there's dead space in it. That is filler. That is, it's the tissue paper, or the crinkle grass thing, like the little like crinkle strips that you put in. That is filler. Filler is the tissue paper and the little crinkle dinkle grass that you put in birthday gifts and gift baskets. That is filler. It's bullshit that fills the space, that is there to make it look pretty, to make the book look long, to make the book longer, and look like you're accomplishing reading something, or watching a long episode or a long piece of cinema, to make yourself feel, wow, I read this 600-page book. Wow, I watched this 3-hour movie, but I don't feel anything after it, because that shit had crinkle grass and tissue paper in it. Okay? That's what it had in it. It had crinkle grass and tissue paper in your movie, in your book, in your TV show, in your play. It's it is one of the biggest things that you can do to harm your story ever, and it's one of the things that will keep your audience disengaged. It's one of the things that will it literally leaves a hole within your thought. Like, is this good enough? I don't know, because there's something missing. Like, if there's a chapter that feels like filler, rewrite it, get rid of it. Chapter, scene, whatever, get rid of it. And if you don't, and if I read a book that has filler in it, I will write a nicely worded, but I don't want to say angry. Word choices. A nicely worded yet stern letter to that author. Don't write filler. Say it. Repeat after me. I will not write filler. Thank you. Okay. and it's one of those things is it's just when words. The thing about writing stories that makes them the hardest is putting passion into it even when you don't feel like it. Because here's the thing. People are passionate about what other people are passionate about. And it is one of those things where if you don't have enough passion in it, then it's probably not going to come back to you in the way that you want it to. But also, just the fact of if people don't feel passion within every single word that you have on that page, within, like within everything, they're going to put the book down. The book is not the book, the movie, the TV show is not interesting enough. And the thing is too, where a lot of people get lost, they try to be someone else. This is your story. Sure, we have a bunch of retellings, and why people love retellings is one, because they kind of know what already is going to happen, so it's a little bit more comforting as of a story to read, because okay, well, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so they're going to end up in love and it's going to be fantastic and great and so magical. But at the same time, as much as it is, nice to know what already happens, it's also intriguing to read, okay, what is this person's take on it? Because we already have William Shakespeare, Jane Austen, Stephen King's, like J.K. Rowling's, like we have those people already. So stop trying to be them. Stop trying to you can sure kind of emulate a writer in a sense, but like don't try to be a writer that is not yourself, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to feel that hole and wonder if it's good enough, because you're going to spend all of your time comparing yourself to that author. We don't need another William Shakespeare. We don't need another Jane Austen, because they've lived their time. Their books are still being read because they are pieces of literature that will always just be known as these wonderful pieces, and these classics, and just broken down to like extremes, and also just known as just like founding fathers of, of literature. I mean, and also their stories have been enjoyed for so many years and will continue to be enjoyed, just because you can enjoy them without even breaking down them. Like, right, like I'm not trying to be that English teacher where like, oh my god, the first sentence is the sky was blue. What does the author mean by this? Sometimes the author just means the sky is blue, within their story, because it's their story. Huh, segue. It's because, oh my god. Hello. I hate English. But, what's so beautiful about art is that, yes, we can interpret it, but also interpreting it through yourself as the author, as the writer. Just, sometimes the writer just means the sky is blue or the lantern is green. And it can be as simple as you want it to be, or it can be as deep as you want it to be as well. The sky is blue you could be that English teacher and be like, wow, the author said the sky is blue, and it's like, what does that mean here? And it'd be like a metaphor for the like symbolism of the color blue in the book. The color blue is used a lot in this book, and blah 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 blah. And like it's the character is surrounded by blue, and it means that the character is sad, and because blue is a sad color, or a color that we associate with sadness. But it could also just mean that the sky is blue, you know? The the very interesting thing about art is that, like, just the way that it's stuck around this long is because people are passionate about it. It's not just about like, oh, like this is a defining piece of literature and everyone needs to read it and study it and break it down word by word because every single word has like this crazy amount of symbolism. I guarantee you it doesn't. But also, like, yeah, these are things that we get to dissect, but these are also things that we get to enjoy and know that they are good enough just to as enjoyable pieces, which is where a lot of segue, where a lot of writers get very hung up because I feel like everything needs to mean something. It doesn't. It really doesn't. You can write a novel that is lighthearted and fun loving and just an enjoyable read. You don't have to write like this profound story that is going to change the lives of billions of people. You can write a story that may change the lives of some, but is also just a piece to be enjoyed and be okay with it, because art is subjective. Art is also the way that we is a way that we use to communicate. We can communicate joy and sadness and love and fun and playfulness through art. You know, there's so there's so much to do with it, and so many people get hung up on it and quit their passions because they feel like it doesn't mean enough when it does. Because people love what other people are passionate about, and just because someone else tells you otherwise that it's not good enough, but you feel it's good enough, then it's good enough. That's where I'm going to end the podcast here for today. Thank you so much for watching, for listening over on Spotify. Spotify listeners, love you to death. Um, yeah, it's yeah. You can if you go to my website, writersblockpod.com, you can join my mailing list, as well as you can find links to all my social medias, including my Instagram, Adelina Zach Author, where I post weekly tips, as well over on my blog that's on my website as well, in the description of both the YouTube and the Spotify podcast. You can find a Google form which you can ask me questions, any question about writing. I will answer it here on the podcast, on my blog, or um, on my Instagram as well. Just look out for it. And as well as you can join my mailing list, which if I fix it, I think I will be able to fix it. I don't know. I get to look at that. But you can join my mailing list, but um hopefully eventually you will get access to a Discord where you can connect with other writers and um yeah, just keep writing, keep doing what you're passionate about, and I'll see you next time.